to his beloved son, Henry Lasserre, Pius the Ninth, Pope, beloved son, salutation and the apostolic benediction. Receive our felicitations, very dear son. Having obtained some time since a most remarkable benefit, you have just accomplished scrupulously and with feelings of love the vow you then made. You have just employed your best efforts in proving and establishing the truth of the recent apparition of the most clement Mother of God. And this you have done in such a manner that the very struggle of human malice against the divine mercy serves but to bring out more forcibly the luminous evidence of the fact. In the explanation you have afforded of events, their progress dependence on each other, all men may perceive clearly and with certitude how our most holy religion tends towards and results in the true advantage of all people. How it heaps on all those who have recourse to it gifts not only of a celestial and spiritual, but also of a temporal and terrestrial nature. They will be able to see how, even in the absence of all material force, this religion is all powerful for the maintenance of order. How amid excited multitudes it can restrain within just bounds the anger and indignation, however justified, of exasperated minds. They will be able to see, lastly, how the clergy cooperate by their loyal efforts and zeal towards the attainment of such results, and how, far from encouraging superstition, they display infinitely more deliberation and severity of investigation than any other class of men. When it is a question of pronouncing judgment with reference to facts which seemingly surpass the ordinary powers of nature, your narrative is no less luminous a manner. Your narrative, in no less luminous a manner, will render manifest the following truth: that impiety declares war against religion entirely in vain, and that the attempts of the wicked to hamper the divine counsels of providence by human machinations are utterly unavailing. The perversity of men and their criminal audacity serving, on the contrary, as a means in the hands of providence to confer on its works more power and splendor. Such are the reasons which have induced us to receive with the most lively joy your work entitled Our Lady of Lourdes. We firmly believe that she who, from every quarter, attracts towards herself, by miracles of her power and goodness, multitudes of pilgrims, wills in the same manner to employ your book in order to propagate more widely, and to excite towards herself the piety and confidence of mankind to the end that all may participate in the plenitude of her graces. As a pledge of the success we predict for your work, receive our apostolic benediction, which we address to you very affectionately as a testimony of our gratitude and our parental benevolence, given at Rome at St. Peter's 4 September 1869 in the year of our pontificate, XX14 Pius the Ninth, Pope. In consequence of a remarkable favor received, the account of which will be duly found in the course of this work, I promised, some years ago, to write the history of the extraordinary events which have given rise to the pilgrimage of Lourdes. If I have been guilty of a grave fault in deferring for so long a time the execution of my promise, I have at least made the most conscientious efforts to study, with scrupulous attention, the subject I wished to treat. The presence of the incessant procession of visitors, pilgrims, men, women, whole populations who come now from every quarter to kneel before a lonely grotto, entirely unknown 10 years ago, and which the word of a child has caused to be regarded all at once as a divine sanctuary. On seeing the vast edifice rising which the faith of the people is erecting on that spot, at a cost of nearly 2 millions, I felt an earnest desire not only to search for the proofs of the supernatural fact itself, but also to trace in what manner, by what logical connection of things or of ideas, the belief in it had been so universally spread. How has it been produced? How was an event of such a nature accomplished in the middle of the 19th century? How could the testimony of an illiterate little girl with regard to a fact so extraordinary, touching apparitions, which no one of those around her saw, find credit and give birth to such astonishing results? There are persons who have one peremptory word in answer to such questions, and the word superstition is very convenient for that purpose. For my own part, I am not so expeditious, and I wished to account to myself for a phenomenon so entirely out of the ordinary course of things, and so worthy of attention, from whatever point of view we regard it. Whether the miracle be true or false, whether the cause of this vast concourse of people is to be found in divine agency or human error, a study of this kind does not the less possess the highest interest. I remark, however, that the sectaries of free thought are very cautious of entering upon it. They prefer to deny the whole thing bluntly. This is, at the same time, easier and more prudent. I understand very differently from them the restless search after truth. If to deny everything flatly appears to them the simplest mode, to affirm everything roundly appears to me to be somewhat hazardous. I have seen savants toil up the steep paths of mountains in order to be able to explain to themselves why an insect of a certain class, which is found during the summer on the highest peaks, is, after the winter has set in, only to be met with in the valleys. This is all very well, and I cannot blame them. I sometimes say to myself, however, that the great movements of humanity and the causes which set immense multitudes in motion have claims fully as great on the employment of the sagacity of the human mind. History, religion, science, philosophy, medicine, the different workings of human nature are, in my opinion, quite as curious as entomology. This study I wished to render complete. I did not, therefore, content myself with official documents or letters, or official reports, or written attestations. It was my wish, as much as possible, to know everything and see everything for myself, to have everything brought freshly before my eyes through the memory and narrative of eyewitnesses. I have made long journeys over France to interrogate all those who had figured, whether as the chief personages or as witnesses, in the events I had to recount, to check their accounts by comparing them one with another, and then arrive at entire and lucid truth. In my investigations connected with this divine history, I wished, in a word, to follow and even push further, in that, if that were possible, the excellent method which Monsieur Thiers has employed with such happy results in the long labors and sagacious researches, which preceded his chef d'oeuvre on the consulate and the empire. I trust that, with God's assistance, my efforts have not been entirely in vain. Once having acquired the truth, I have written about it as freely as if, like the Duc de Saint-Simon, I had closed my door and written a history not destined to appear to the world until after the lapse of a century. I have wished to say everything while the witnesses are still living, to give their names and place of abode, that it might be possible for others to interrogate them and to renew the investigation I have myself made, in order to control my own labor. It was my wish that each reader might examine for himself my assertions and render homage to the truth. If I have been sincere, it was my wish that he might be able to cover me with It was my wish that he might be able to cover me with confusion and dishonor if I have been guilty of falsehoods. The deep investigation to which I devoted myself, the documents I consulted, the numerous testimonies I have heard, have allowed me to enter into circumstantial details, which were not at the disposal of those who gave a summary account of these events when they first occurred, as also to rectify sundry errors which had crept into the chronological department. I have been most attentive in re-establishing the exact order in which the several events occurred. This was very necessary in order to convey a just conception of their logical consequences and their real essence. To study facts not only in their outward appearance, but in their hidden life. To trace with an ever wakeful attention the link often distant, often imperceptible at first sight, which unites them, to understand and explain clearly their cause, origin, and generation, to surprise and detect the action of the eternal laws and marvelous harmonies of the miraculous orders. In the depths one attempts to illuminate, such is the aim I had the boldness to conceive. Such being my thoughts, no circumstance could be a matter of indifference or deserve neglect. The slightest detail might contain a light and permit me to seize, if I may be allowed, so to speak, the hand of God in flagrante delicto. From this arose my researches. From this, the form very different from the habitual style of official histories, which my narrative adopted of its own accord. From this, both in my account of the apparitions as in that of the miraculous cures, those portraits, dialogues, landscapes, circumstances of time and place, and descriptions of the weather. From this, those thousand details which have cost me so much trouble to collect, but which gave me as I piously stored them up, the unspeakable pleasure of seeing for myself, of tasting and feeling with all the charm of a discovery scarcely suspected beforehand, the deep harmony of works which proceed from God. This joy I now endeavor to communicate to my readers, to my friends, to those who are curious to learn the secrets from on high. Some of these details at times arrive so wonderfully and opportunely that the reader, accustomed to the discourse of this world, might suspect the painter of flattery in his picture. But God is an artist that needs not the invention of others. The supernatural works which He designs to accomplish here below are perfect in themselves. To copy them faithfully would be to hit on the ideal. But who can copy them in this way? Who can see them in all their beauty and harmony? Who has not his sight dimmed? Who can penetrate all the secrets of these great and little things? No one, alas! Almost everything escapes us, and we only see by glimpses. I have now dared to say what I should have wished to have done. The reader alone will see what I have done. The small town of Lourdes is situated in the department of the Hautes-Pyrenees, at the embouchure of the 7 valleys of the Lavedan, between the last undulations of the hills terminating the plain of Tarbes and the first escarpments with which the Grande Montagne commences. Its houses, scattered irregularly over an uneven surface, are grouped as it were in defiance of order at the base of an enormous rock, entirely isolated, on the summit of which rises like the nest of an eagle a formidable castle. At the foot of this rock, beneath the shade of alders, oaks, and poplars, the Gave hurries rapidly along, breaking its foaming water. The Gave hurries rapidly along, breaking its foaming waters against a bar of pebbles, and serving to turn the noisy wheels of 3 or 4 mills built on its banks. The din of these mills and the murmur of the wind in the branches of the trees are mingled with the sound of its gliding waves. The Gave is formed by the several torrents of the upper valleys, which in their turn themselves issue from the eternal glaciers and stainless snows, which mask, in the depths of the chain, the arid sides of the Grande Montagne. The most important of these tributaries proceeds from the cascade of Gavarine, which falls, as everyone knows, from one of those rare peaks which no human foot has yet been able to scale. Leaving on its right the town, the castle and all the mills of Lourdes, with the exception of one built on its left bank, the Gave, if anxious to reach its ultimate destination, flows rapidly towards the town of Pau, which it hurries by in order to join the Adour and finally the ocean. In the environs of Lourdes, the scenery on the banks of the Gave is sometimes wild and savage, sometimes charming. Verdant meadows, cultivated fields, thick woods, and lofty rocks are reflected by turns in its waters. Here, the eye gazes over smiling and cultivated farms, the most graceful landscape, the high road to Pau, continually dotted with carriages, horsemen, and travelers on foot. There, over stern mountains in all the terror of their solitude. The castle of Lourdes, almost impregnable before the invention of artillery, was in the days of yore the key of the Pyrenees. It has been handed down by tradition that Charlemagne, at war with the infidels, was long unable to take possession of it, just as he was on the point of raising the siege, an eagle, winging his flight above the highest tower of the beleaguered fortress, let fall upon it a splendid fish, which it had just captured in a lake in the neighborhood. Whether it was that, on this particular day, the laws of the church prescribed abstinence, or that the fish was a Christian symbol still popular at that epoch, one thing is certain: the Saracen chief, Murat, who occupied the castle, regarded the occurrence in the light of a prodigy, and became a convert to the true faith. It needed nothing less than this miraculous conversion of Murat and his subsequent baptism to reincorporate this castle into the domains of Christendom. Further, the Saracen, as the chronicle informs us, expressly stipulated that having become the champion of Our Lady, the Mother of God, he would have it understood, both in his own case and in that of his descendants, that his dignity of Count, free from all earthly fiefdom, was held from her alone. The punning coat of arms of the town testified to this extraordinary fact of the eagle and the fish. Lord bears on a field gules, 3 towers, or faced with stonework, sable on a rock, argent. The center tower, higher than that on either side, is surmounted by an eagle with outstretched wings, sable holding in his beak a trout, argent. During the whole period of the Middle Ages, the castle of Lourdes was a center of terror to the surrounding country, sometimes in the name of the English, sometimes in that of the Counts of Bigorre. It was occupied by a kind of freebooting captains, who, in point of fact, warred strictly on their own account and levied contributions on the inhabitants of the plain in a circle of 40 or 50 leagues. Their incredible audacity, we are told, carried them even to the extent of laying violent hands on persons and property, up to the very gates of Montpellier, after which they sought security like veritable birds of prey in their own inaccessible eyrie. In the 18th century, the castle of Lourdes was converted into a state prison. It was the Bastille of the Pyrenees. The Revolution opened the gates of this prison to 3 or 4 persons confined in it by the arbitrary power of despotism, and in return peopled with several hundreds of criminals who, to tell the truth, were culpable in a very different way. A contemporary author has noticed on the prison register the offenses of these unfortunate wretches. He gives us specimens of the designations of the crimes attached to the name of each prisoner. Unpatriotic, having refused the kiss of peace to citizen N before the altar of our country. Troublesome A, drunkard, cold as ice toward the revolution, hypocritical in disposition and reserved in his opinions, a peaceable harpagon, indifferent towards the revolution, etc., etc., etc. From this, we perceive that the revolution had just reasons for complaining of the arbitrary power of kings and had substituted a regime of mild toleration, an entire liberty for the terrible despotism of the monarch.